Hi everyone, Happy New Year and welcome back for 2023 to the Good Girl Confessional Podcast. I am of course your host Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional Podcast is proudly the award-winning podcast of the WB40 Women Beyond 40 platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. We like to call it Lube for Your Mind. You can check us out over at wb40.com, and also I would like to shout out to Alex the Seal, a podcast which I also proudly co-host. You can check us out anytime, Alex the Seal Podcast. Before I begin today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded and where I live, play and work. And in my case, it is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I want to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and pay homage to their incredibly long history of storytelling. Today in the podcast, the first episode for 2023, I'm really thrilled to be talking to an incredible woman. Like myself, she is a pro-aging advocate. Her name is Faith Agugu, and Faith is such an extraordinary woman. She is the founder of a movement called Silver Sirens, where she brings women together, diverse, incredible women, to embrace aging. She does live events, online events, all sorts of events. She's pretty extraordinary. I know that you are going to love her story. Please welcome to the podcast, Faith Agugu.
Hey there. When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly.
Hello, Faith, and welcome to the confessional. How are you today?
Good, thank you, Sandy. Lovely to meet you eventually. It's been a while.
It has been a while in the making, and I feel like, I don't know if the universe was against us, but we're here now, and I'm super excited to meet you finally.
We prevailed.
We have prevailed. I first heard all about you through Sandy Davies and Susan Jarvis and wonderful friends who think that you are amazing, and I've been following along with you, and I think you are as well. So I wanted to have you on today because I think our vision is so aligned. So obviously Women Beyond 40 on the Good Girl Confessional is a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond, and it really is about changing the narrative around ageism. So you, like me, are a pro-aging advocate, which I love. And I wanted to ask, tell us all about Silver Sirens and where this concept came from.
Yeah, big topic. I mean, I'm so excited that this area is being fleshed out with so many amazing women. I started, Silver Sirens were originally launched in 2018. And I'm a psychotherapist. I'm based in Sydney. And the idea was launched because as a psychotherapist, I was referred to, and women who were in their 40s and early 50s were referred to me because they were actually in depression around aging. And as a woman of African descent, that's the opposite to what I grew up with. My culture is about revering aging. The oldest person in the room is the most special person in the room. It's the most important person in the room, the most aspirational, the person that we're all aspiring to be. So even though I'd been a model for a very long time, I knew that there was ageism, around. But I thought it was specific because I was a model, and I'd been a model, and also because I worked in the fashion industry. I didn't realize that it permeated all aspects of Western society. So I was kind of quite surprised. So the idea of Silver Sirens came because working with these women, I realized that they had internalized this negative narrative. Most of the time it wasn't theirs, but then internalized this idea that women decayed. Women became less, and as women lost their youth and their fertility, their value decreased. And women were talking about feeling invisible. And, women that were having children leaving were talking about the grief around empty nests, and women were struggling around irrelevance. And then there was all the physical changes that were going on that they were freaking out about. Their hair was going great. They were getting the thickness in the middle. And, I worked so hard at the gym. Why is that not changing? So, together we went on this exploration. And one woman led to another. And in one stage, I had 8 to 10 women in my practice who were just looking at aging. And as I was working with them, I learned a lot about the process, and what they were going through. And even though it wasn't my personal experience, I was learning with them about what that was for them. And I felt really pissed off is what I felt. I felt pissed off that the narrative was so kind and positive towards men and so cruel towards women. And for me, my instinct was, fuck that. Sorry if I'm not supposed to swear. But I just said, no, this has got to change. And then I started to, look at what could I do? So I wanted to create a platform that, one, addressed these concerns that women were having, but two, offered an alternative narrative, and to think about aging as a celebration, a privilege and a celebration. And that's really what the inspiration for Silver Sirens was for me.
I love this. This is like music to my ears, Faith, because, from someone who was, raised in Western society where you're absolutely right. There is this patriarchal and societal view that women, once we hit this bizarre magical age of 40, there's like a line in the sand. We can't quite see it, but we know that it's there. And it's like as soon as we step over that line, somehow our value starts to decrease with every year, which is ridiculous. And yet my experience was meeting so many extraordinary women who were in their 50s and 60s and doing like incredible things and had started businesses and were adventuring. They were going out into the world and really, really pushing against those boundaries. And so my experience of women was the complete opposite of what society and the patriarchy is trying to tell us. And so absolutely fuck that. And I think, right, I think it's a really extraordinary thing. But on the other side of that too, I was also meeting a lot of women through my platform, which I started in 2019, who were saying they felt invisible, who were saying that they just felt like they didn't really know what their place was anymore in society or in the workforce or even in their relationships. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And, and it's natural that there is a natural phase we come to. And there's lots of phases that we come to in life. We go through teenage and, then young adulthood. And this is the next phase. And our society is not geared up to prepare us for it. So women, and I know men, but my passion is with women, we reach this age and there's no one around us telling us that this is normal, this is natural, this is normal. There are physical changes that are happening around menopause that, even though it can be difficult for some women, there's so many gifts in that process as well. It's transforming us. Our bodies are no longer working on creating humans. So there's all those physical, but there's also psychological and spiritual changes going on. And because we're not prepared for it, we can just focus on the negative. No one tells us that on the other side of this transition is this amazing new life. And for me, my role model was my mother. My mother in her 50s was so inspiring. Her relationship with my father was not nurturing for her at all. And luckily for her, the relationship ended. She went and studied. She started to travel. She started a new relationship where she was completely in control and she had the power in that relationship. And I watched this woman who dedicated all her life to everybody else and sacrificed for everyone else suddenly blossoming, and I witnessed that, and I saw that and I wanted some of that, and so for me, the idea of getting to midlife was exciting, not fearful. It was very, very exciting.
All right, and how bloody amazing that you had such a powerful role model, because for a lot of women, they don't have that. And one of the reasons, I guess, I was really passionate to start Women Beyond 40 and to have it as a print magazine, for example, was because I'm a huge believer that we can't be what we can't see. Yeah. So mainstream media is not reflecting us back to ourselves. They're just not, right? And yes, we see some extraordinary celebrities in their 50s, 60s. They look incredible, but that's actually quite damaging for a lot of women as well, because they feel like it's unattainable and they feel like, well, why don't I look like that? Why can't I be like that? Instead of embracing and nurturing the extraordinary people that they are just as they are.
Yes, yeah. And that's really hard. And I'm glad that you mentioned the role models, that we see on TV. One, there's few and far between. There's literally like, say, 5, 10 women. We see our Helen Mirren, you see Jane Fonda. There's like 10 women that you see over and over again around aging. And these women, no disrespect to them, but they are women that have a lot of resources and money to maintain the way they look. The average woman does not have that. So when we have these women as our only role models, it could then be that typical pressure that women take on and internalize it. If I'm not looking like that, there's something wrong with me. I'm aging badly. And I just say one thing about Silver Sirens, it's like age in your own terms, age on your own terms. That's the big, if you choose to do plastic surgery or not, great, do whatever you like. If you choose to just let it all go and do whatever you like, but be happy, be fulfilled, be happy. And that's what's really, really important. So we need realistic role models. I really agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And I think that it's a really interesting thing that we witness in society, and especially in the media, where we see that as men age, we use terms like silver fox, and we sort of, right? Oh my God, he's aged like a fine wine, exactly. All of the rubbish that we hear about, which is great, good for men, but there's a double standard going on with women. So for women, the moment that, your hair starts to grey or you're getting wrinkles or whatever, there's a whole different kind of thing that we hear. And we hear words like, crone, and we hear words like, just blatantly people will say, oh my God, she's so old. Do you know what I mean? Rather than embracing the vibrancy of women, like we're not held to the same standards as men.
Yeah. No. That bottom line is, like you said, it's the patriarchal. This is a society, the context in which we live in. We've never been held in the same standard. It's a lot more harsh, much crueler for us, and we understand that, and we have to work with that. And that's why I really love is, as women, we can't wait for men to change the narrative. We've got to change it because we're the ones that's living it. And I love that. That feels empowering. I've always had the attitude, even as a woman, as a colour, if there's no seat at the table, I will always build my own seat. I do not, I'm not going to wait for you to invite me. I will build my own seat, and I'll take all my sisters along with me. For me, that's what it's about. And I think that's what I love about women. I watch women doing such amazing things in this space, and it's all about opening the doors for more and more women to come through. And I think that's what makes women really stand out,
Absolutely. And I think that that's the other thing too, is I am really passionate about changing this narrative that women are competitive against women, because that's a patriarchal construct that it's easy because it keeps women in their place, right? It's such bullshit. My experience of being in this kind of sector around women, working with a lot of women, is that if you ask people for help, women will always step forward. Yeah. And somebody said something to me, and I love this, it's like, put the ladder down so your sisters can come up. And then someone said to me, they'd heard this expression, no, throw the damn net out, right? I think that is so, right? I just love that so much. It's so important. And I think, it's really fascinating. I had a guest on the podcast, and they mentioned another woman, and she said, oh, I'm really sorry, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I said, absolutely you should, because here's the thing. I said, the more women that are singing, the more chance this choir's getting heard, right?
Absolutely.
But that's our reality.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and I started off in my career, like as a model, and I know that in that environment, you are supposed to be competitive, and you're supposed to be afraid of the next person who's going to take your spot, and it's very competitive, and I'm so grateful from the beginning that I had women around me who didn't do that, and I didn't grow up, going through that. I didn't have women that did that. I had lots. I heard that it happened, but I never had anyone that did that. And I also worked in fashion for 30 years, the same sort of thing. Again, and I taught at the fashion school, and I would always stress so much how important it was for us not to not to play along with those.
Hello, Sandy here from the Good Girl Confessional Podcast. The Good Girl Confessional Podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to see the rest of the video, please head over to WB40.com and subscribe to WB40 Extra. By subscribing to WB40 Extra, you're helping to support the hard-won wisdom of incredible women. So thank you. Please remember to like, share and follow.